only ambition, and I want mine, and I will do anything to protect and feed my family. And these niggas represent a threat. Because I worked too hard on this.
You know what I'm saying? It's that situation when you got, we are living in a war zone. It's not as easy as these people are making us think, that they just got some criminal ass black kids with guns. It is not like that. We live in hell. We live in the gutter. We got us stacked up 80 deep in one building. You know, by the time you get out your house, you strapped to protect yourself.
This wasn't just an East Coast versus West Coast war. This was something far darker. A silent contract, a $1 million betrayal, and the erasing of a legend. In the final hours of his life, Tupac Shakur made a desperate phone call. Not to a friend, but to someone he believed could stop what was coming. In that call, he named names, powerful names. One of them, Diddy. For years, this call has been buried under fear, money, and silence. Industry insiders were warned to stay quiet. Those who knew too much disappeared. What did Tupac say in that last call? And why has it never been heard? Until now. Before we dive in, make sure you subscribe to the channel, because everything you thought you knew is about to be shattered. On September 7th, 1996, Tupac made one final call. Not to a friend, but to a fixer in LA. The call came from a secure line at the Luxor Hotel under a false name. It lasted 13 minutes and was recorded on purpose. Tupac had been watching death row closely. Strange meetings, unfamiliar faces, Suga's secret calls. But the threat went beyond Suge. He described a triangle: death row, bad boy, and a third group tied to corporate money laundering and private security.
People talking about an East Coast, West Coast war, they like the Judas was to Jesus. They only here to cause confusion. Battling off of East and West like this is a game. This ain't no game. If this was chess, we'd be yelling checkmate 3 years ago, because we've been beat these.
He gave names, dates, and details. A $500,000 transfer in Santa Monica. A suitcase of cash exchanged between an East Coast manager and a Crip contact. He warned that Vegas wasn't safe. The man who took the call fled days later. The recording was copied and hidden. Tupac didn't just leave music behind, he left a map, and anyone who's tried to follow it has paid the price. But to truly understand what Tupac said in that final phone call and why it was so dangerous, we have to go back.
He's our Elvis.
I saw Pac 20 minutes before he got shot. Our first reaction was,
again? You know what I'm saying? He always getting shot or shot at.
He was like a cat with like 9 lives.
Anybody who had something to do with hip-hop and loved the music was a sense of mourning for a long time. Because of his consistency and his work ethic.
Because what happened in Las Vegas wasn't just a shooting. It was the boiling point of a cultural war that had been escalating in the shadows for years. And that war had a name: East Coast versus West Coast.
All these weak rats, we be yelling checkmate 3 years ago, because we've been beat these. It's not a game.
It started with pride, regional competition between hip-hop's two biggest epicenters. New York had the roots, the legends, the early dominance. LA had the rawness, the rebellion, the streets. But what began as artistic rivalry turned personal, then political, and finally, lethal. By the early 90s, tension between the coasts had already been simmering. Media coverage loved to frame it as a lyrical battle, but behind the scenes it was about money, control, and ownership. Record labels had started backing their artists like street crews. Every diss track brought real-world consequences. Then came the spark. Tupac Shakur was shot 5 times at Quad Studios in Manhattan in 1994. He survived, barely. And in the days that followed, he didn't stay silent. He accused people. He questioned allegiances. And whether true or not, he believed, with everything in him, that he had been set up by those he once considered allies. That incident changed everything. After the shooting, Tupac aligned himself with Suge Knight and Death Row Records. The West Coast now had its general, and he wasn't pulling punches. His music turned into war anthems. His interviews were loaded with venom. And across the country, Bad Boy Records, led by Sean Puffy Combs and fronted by the notorious B.I.G., was forced into the crosshairs. The media ate it up. Vibe magazine, MTV, and countless radio shows played both sides, stoking the rivalry for views and sales. Tupac didn't just rap about betrayal, he lived it. As his fame grew, so did his paranoia. Not without reason. What made the war even more dangerous was that it wasn't just rappers involved anymore. Gangs had infiltrated the business. Allegiances were shifting not just between coasts, but between street sets. And that war? It was never really East Coast versus West Coast. It was top versus bottom, power versus voice. And Tupac, for all his fame, all his fire, all his fight, was a voice too loud for the system to tolerate.
It ain't East versus West. It's Pac and Big going back and forth, and they gonna do records and everything else, and that's the it. Lee Naughty was on the road with Bad Boy during the whole turmoil. I'm asking Big and them like, yo, after the shows, why y'all don't go out with us? Well, man, this with Death Row and all that. I said, Death Row. Yeah, can I speak to Suge? He ain't here. Nah, this is Tretch. Oh, hold on. Suge, yeah, what's up, Damo? Yo, where Pac? Oh, he out right now, boom, boom, boom. Yo, we on the road with Bad Boy, and they not going on the road, they ain't doing nothing, they ain't boom, 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 I'm on the... And tell them, go out. We gonna make better records than them, sell more, get more money, ain't nobody after them. Every day after that, they was going to every show, Lil Kim, Junior Mafia asking. It is hip-hop, battle, but ain't going die over this. And it was a rap. Right. That was it.
Now let's talk about the day Tupac died. Not the official date on the death certificate, but the night everything changed. September 7th, 1996. Las Vegas was buzzing. Mike Tyson was fighting Bruce Seldon at the MGM Grand, and the city was flooded with celebrities, athletes, and high-powered figures. Tupac arrived with Suge Knight, the towering CEO of Death Row Records. At that moment, Tupac was riding high, fresh off the success of All Eyes on Me, with his Machiavelli album already completed and plans to break away from Death Row on the horizon. Tyson won the fight in under 2 minutes. As the crowd erupted and people poured into the hallways and lobbies, everything seemed fine. Until it wasn't.
What moments of joy for him, what moments of release. America was asking big questions about the talents of Tyson, and Tyson really could not have answered them in a more emphatic manner than he has done in the ring at the MGM Grand Garden in Las Vegas tonight.
Just minutes after the match, Tupac and Suge were walking through the MGM lobby when a known Crip affiliate, Orlando Baby Lane Anderson, crossed paths with them. Tupac didn't hesitate. He stepped to him and threw the first punch. Within seconds, members of Death Row's entourage were stomping him out on the carpeted floor of the MGM. The entire fight was caught on security cameras. That assault was the trigger. Less than 2 hours later, at around 11 p.m., Tupac and Suge were cruising down Flamingo Road in a black BMW 750IL, heading to Club 662, a Death Row-owned venue where an after-party was scheduled. Tupac was in the passenger seat bobbing his head to music with the sunroof open. They were stopped at a red light just a block away from the Strip. That's when a white, late-model Cadillac pulled up on the passenger side. Within seconds, the silence was shattered by gunfire. At least 13 rounds were fired, 4 of which struck Tupac, twice in the chest, once in the thigh, and once in the arm. 1 bullet punctured his right lung. Suge Knight was grazed in the head by flying glass, but somehow remained mostly unscathed. What's strange is what happened next. Despite being shot multiple times, Tupac was conscious at the scene. Eyewitnesses said he tried to speak. He was taken to University Medical Center, where doctors performed multiple surgeries, including the removal of his lung, to stabilize him.
Who killed Tupac and Biggie? I think both of these dudes were assassinated in some kind of way. More Biggie than Tupac. I think Tupac might have got killed by a dude that they, had an incident with earlier that day. But Biggie's seems a little government.
For the next 6 days, the hospital became a fortress. Media circled outside. Armed security guards were stationed around the clock. Very few people were allowed to visit. Tupac drifted in and out of consciousness, heavily sedated and breathing through machines. There were whispers from insiders that he was aware of what had happened and who might have been behind it. But no official statement ever came from Tupac himself. Doctors at first expressed cautious optimism, but on September 13th, everything changed. Tupac's condition suddenly deteriorated. He went into respiratory failure. He was pronounced dead at 4:03 p.m. Just like that, the most controversial and powerful voice in hip-hop was gone.
Right after I heard Tupac got shot, and I was so weak I damn near fell over. I immediately flew to Vegas, and I walked in the room and I seen him laid out on the bed with all kind of tubes in him. And his mom came over to me, and she grabbed me, she held me up, and she said, "Baby, you got to be strong." And I went and sat next to him and was whispering to him, telling him I loved him and to hold on and he was gonna be okay. And even in that moment, his mom was thinking more about me than herself and showing me how to love strong.
But even after his death, the September 7th shooting remained full of unanswered questions. Why did Soog drive him around for nearly 30 minutes after the shooting before pulling over? Why was there no immediate police pursuit of the white Cadillac? Why were the surveillance cameras from nearby intersections not working? And most of all, how could one of the most high-profile shootings in Las Vegas history result in 0 arrests?
Anderson in civil court. They claim there is evidence he was in the white Cadillac that night in Las Vegas, that he got out and fired the shots.
From 1995 to date, have you ever ridden in a white Cadillac?
No.
Do you know anyone who owns a white Cadillac?
No.
Anderson, an alleged Los Angeles gang member, has vigorously denied any involvement in the murder and in depositions claimed he was not at the scene.
The deeper you dig into the events that reshaped hip-hop in the mid-90s, the more 1994 becomes a smoking foundation. Not because of the bullets, but because of what was happening around them. That night inside Quad Studios wasn't just about Tupac being attacked. It was about how everyone else moved afterward, especially one man, Sean Puffy Combs. While headlines focused on the robbery, Tupac started his own investigation. From his hospital bed to the prison cell, he gathered names, timelines, and patterns. The shooting wasn't just street violence. He was certain it was business. And while he couldn't name every player, one thing haunted him: the way no one upstairs seemed surprised. Tupac's team discovered that just days before the shooting, a well-known music promoter, one closely tied to both Puffy and some Harlem Street figures, had visited Quad Studios for what was supposed to be a security walkthrough. Nothing came of it. No paperwork, no formal booking, just a visit. And then, days later, the ambush happened in that exact building. What made it worse? Puffy didn't just stay quiet. He became extremely calculated. While Tupac was hospitalized, Puffy moved aggressively on key deals and radio placements. Internally, Bad Boy began locking down exclusives, pushing Biggie's image forward and distancing the label from any street affiliations. On paper. But off paper, that's where things got murky. One man who was allegedly seen on the same floor the night of the attack later turned out to be a low-level informant with ties to multiple crews. He was also seen around Puffy's circle at several industry events. Yet, his name never appeared in official police reports or media interviews. And when people started asking questions, he vanished completely by mid-1995. Even stranger, the lack of cooperation with authorities. Despite the fact that multiple industry figures were in the building, including several from Bad Boy, no one claimed to have seen anything. No sounds, no movement, not even a shadow. It was like the ambush had been invisible, or planned with chilling precision. There were also whispers that certain individuals inside Bad Boy had placed strange phone calls just hours before the attack. Not directly to Tupac, but to mutual associates, asking about his travel plans, arrival times, and which entrance he was using. Why would anyone outside his crew be tracking his exact location? Diddy, for his part, maintained distance from the incident. In public, he was calm. In private, he built walls. Bodyguards were cycled, contracts rewritten, and several insiders who had once been close to Tupac suddenly stopped returning calls. It was as if the entire industry had decided who was too dangerous to touch.
Puffy, right? His baby mom, Kim Porter, right? She got a whole lot of Tupac-related posts on her IG. She's right next to Puffy, and she's wearing the Tupac shirt. Did Tupac and Kim Porter know each other?
Bruh, all the people in the industry know at one time, Pac and Puff was like this. They was cool enough where they became enemies. Do you understand that? Where Pac didn't trust him no more, and where Puff idolized some of the things that he was doing. And you gotta remember, they was all swingers. Something happened between them two, and I don't know what it was, and I don't know what it is, that caused a friction between their relationship. Maybe Kim liked Pac more than she liked Puff, but she couldn't have Pac.
Years later, a former music executive, under condition of anonymity, revealed that there was talk of an industry greenlight, not a hit, but a coordinated effort to isolate Tupac after he started asking the wrong questions about money, ownership, and manipulation. And the quad shooting? That may have been the warning shot. Was Diddy behind it? That remains debated, but what's undeniable is that Bad Boy benefited from the fallout, musically, financially, and strategically.
Now, it was this documentary that claimed, which we know wasn't true.
Yeah, check this out. We don't talk about things that are nonsense. We don't even entertain nonsense, my brother. So we're not even going to go there, with all due respect, but I appreciate you as a journalist asking. Thank you.
Because listen, 7 years ago, I'd have been like, yo, did you hire somebody to kill Pac? But no, you do it like a journalist.
Yeah, no, I mean, we wouldn't even get into nonsense like that. You know what I'm saying? It's nonsense.
Which we never believed, by the way.
Yeah, thank you.
Now that we've broken down exactly what happened on September 7th, the Tyson fight, the MGM brawl, the shooting, and Tupac's final days, one name keeps circling back through all of it: Suge Knight. Not just because he was there, not just because he was driving the car, but because so many things about Suge's involvement don't add up. And the deeper you look, the more it seems like silence was his greatest weapon. By the mid-90s, Death Row Records wasn't just a record label. It was a fortress built on fear, gang alliances, and millions of dollars in street-influenced deals. Suge ran the label like a warlord. His reputation for intimidation wasn't just myth. It was backed by real violence, lawsuits, and a long line of people who either fell in line or disappeared from the industry entirely. And Tupac? He was the golden goose, the biggest name on the label, pulling in untouchable sales and commanding all the headlines. But by late 1996, that relationship was crumbling. Tupac had fulfilled his death row contract, and he was preparing to walk. More than that, he was asking questions about missing money, about contracts, about ownership. There were whispers that Tupac had realized Suge had full control over his masters, and that royalties were being siphoned off through hidden expenses. Jets, cars, legal teams, all charged back to the artists, many of whom never saw their rightful share. If Tupac had gone public with that, it would have been the beginning of the end for Suge's empire. And that wasn't the only threat. Suge's network wasn't just music. He had deep gang ties, particularly with the mob Piru Bloods, many of whom were placed on the death row payroll. They weren't just security, they were muscle, and everyone knew it. His influence stretched into Compton, into parts of the LAPD, and into political circles connected to law enforcement and business. Some even claim off-duty cops worked for Suge unofficially, giving him both protection and inside information. He wasn't untouchable, but he acted like he was. At the time of Tupac's murder, Suge was already skating on thin legal ice. The fight at the MGM with Orlando Anderson, captured on camera, was a clear violation of his probation. Tupac's testimony would have sent him back to prison for years. But then, suddenly, Tupac was dead. And Suge served only a fraction of what he could have faced. And then comes the aftermath. While fans grieved, Suge was still in control of Tupac's music. He fast-tracked the Machiavelli album, continued releasing posthumous content, and squeezed every ounce of profit from the legacy. Whether or not he was behind the hit, it's clear Suge Knight was one of the only people who directly benefited from Tupac's silence. So why has he never spoken up? He's given interviews, sure, always dodging the hard questions, smiling, joking, playing dumb. He once even suggested Tupac was alive in Cuba, deflecting from the truth with conspiracy bait. But that silence? It wasn't confusing. It was a strategy. Just 6 months after Tupac Shakur's murder stunned the world, Christopher Wallace, the notorious B.I.G., was gunned down in Los Angeles on March 9, 1997. He had just attended the Soul Train Music Awards and was on his way back to a party at the Peterson Automotive Museum. Surrounded by fans, friends, and bodyguards, Biggie was riding high. But by the end of the night, the East Coast's most iconic voice was silenced, shot in a drive-by eerily similar to the one that killed Tupac. Was it retaliation? Was it part of a larger conspiracy? Or was it the cleanup of unfinished business? Let's break down what we do know and what we're not supposed to. In the months after Tupac's death, Biggie's name was dragged through the mud. Despite denying any involvement in Tupac's Las Vegas shooting, whispers in the street and relentless media pressure made him a suspect in the court of public opinion. Tensions were boiling, and Biggie knew it. In fact, many of his close friends urged him not to travel to LA for the Soul Train weekend. But Biggie didn't back down. He wanted to prove that he wasn't hiding. So he came. He smiled for the cameras. He gave interviews saying he wished for peace. But behind the scenes, there was real fear. Bad Boy Records hired extra security. Biggie's movements were tightly controlled, but none of it mattered. At around 12:45 a.m., Biggie was leaving the party in a green GMC Suburban. Just as his vehicle stopped at a red light on Fairfax and Wilshire, a black Chevy Impala pulled up beside him. A man in a blue suit leaned out the window and opened fire. 4 bullets struck Biggie. 1 hit his heart. He died shortly after at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center. 2 deaths, 6 months apart, and a message sent: "This ends now." Biggie Smalls may have been in the wrong place at the wrong time. Or maybe he was exactly where someone needed him to be. But one thing is certain. His murder wasn't random. It was organized, it was efficient, and it was meant to disappear. So was it a cover-up to protect corrupt power players? Or a consequence of stepping too deep into a world that never had rules? Either way, the game ended the same. 2 legends gone, no justice. And a silence louder than gunfire. And that's it for today's video. The deeper you look, the darker it gets, and some truths were never meant to surface. If this left you thinking, don't just scroll. Hit that like button, drop your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe for more stories they don't want told. Turn on notifications, because what's coming next? You won't want to miss it.